Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of To the Point podcast. On a little early today, but had some free time, ready to jump into the takes. Lots to get into, and decided to start early today. Um, Fun fact: pre-show, I was given a few little gifts to put around the office. I've had a few for a while, but I saw this one today, and it made me think of obviously the Rangers played last night. They got a victory. We'll talk about that. But this is a Wayne Gretzky little bobblehead type thing with the Rangers. 99 with the Rangers little bobblehead. And then I was given some helmets pre-show as well. We got San Francisco right here, little helmet. Cincinnati Bengals. I got the Cleveland Browns. Deshaun Watson represent, of course. So a few little tricks of the trade. And also, I should have did this earlier, but why not? We're starting the show today. We're going to show a few things here. This is a Wimbledon towel that I've been given. See, it's 18. It's when Wimbledon started, 1877. And it's cool. I've had this for a decade, and I haven't showed it yet. Yeah, I've had this at least for a decade. My dad bought it for me. I've never opened it. It's a really cool towel. You'll see them at the All England Club. This, you can see that the tag is still on it. I don't think I'll ever open it. Maybe when I'm a lot older, but I've gone 10 years without opening. It's like having a rare action figure. I don't want to, I don't want to waste it. I don't want to. It holds a lot of significant value to me, and I don't think I'm going to open it. But those are just a few things we got. Also got you guys a signed puck from a Joe McGinley here. I don't know why I decided to show this stuff today, but I have it. I always have it on my table in front of me as I'm starting to, do the show, and I'm just like, okay, well, why don't I show this stuff, or why don't we talk about this? Have Greta with me right in front of me the whole time. When I see Gretzky 99 on the back, and I'm looking, straight ahead, it can't help but motivate me, right? I mean, Wayne Gretzky sitting there. But yeah, Wayne Gretzky's New York Rangers, one of his teams, played extremely well last night. We're going to get into that. Tennis with the women today, with the French Open, really was a fait accompli where you have Iga Swiatek, who's been the most dominant player in women's tennis, has just 6-1, 6-2 today, just dominance. She's won her 34th match in a row. And the way she's playing, what intrigues me is, of course, winning a French Open. Then you have the lead up to Wimbledon if she ends up winning. But how far does this go? I mentioned last week the longest winning streak in women's tennis history is Martina Navratilova at 75. So knowing the amount Iga plays a lot. She doesn't usually take a lot of time off. She'll play lead up events. And she'd have to win 40 more if she wins the French Open on Saturday morning. But I'm intrigued to see how many wins she can get. 34 in a row. I think she's going to win. So it'll be a 35th. She'd have to, again, go on an extremely rare run. But she's having no problems in these matches. She's been dominant. But Swiatek will meet 18-year-old American Coco Gauff in the French Open women's final, who has not dropped a set in this tournament, if you can believe it. 2 weeks ago, graduated from high school, has been on the scene for a while. You see the family at every match. She's really easy to root for. And the women's final, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I read an interesting piece yesterday about how women's tennis is not as entertaining to watch as men's. And on the surface, I agree for right now, but I think that is going to change. And the reason I say that is because the men's game is going to lose their three pillars very, very soon. Roger Federer is ostensibly done. Rafael Nadal is on his way out. I don't think he's got much longer to play professional tennis, the way his body is and just the amount of surgeries he's had. I don't see him having a long shelf life, a long career. And then you keep going, and Djokovic, he might play for a few more years, but he's a guy that is flaky. I think he loves the game, but at the same time, I think he's been pissed off at the tennis world, the way he's been treated. And after he gets past Nadal when it comes to major championships, I think he'll hang them up after that. But so losing those three guys, yes, there's the Denis Shapovalovs, and yes, there's Daniil Medvedev and Tsitsipas, and Holger Rune, who had a good run, Casper Ruud from Norway, who's in the semifinal, who's going to play Marin Cilic tomorrow. But there's those younger guys haven't gripped. Kyrgios is a big name that people like, but he's often out early in tournaments. He didn't even play at the French Open, so he's unreliable, even though he's a big name. So you're looking around saying, who are we going to jump behind? Who's the guy that we rally about? It could be Denis Shapovalov, because I think you're going to have an emotion about him. Obviously, a few weeks ago when he told the fans in Italy to go F themselves and shut the F up, that got a reaction. He's a guy that's very much high strung, and maybe that could happen. But with the women's game, every tournament is very much wide open. Swiatek's been dominant, but before this, it's a different major champion after a different major champion. 8 of the top 10 women's seeds were eliminated before the third round at this French Open. So it was just a cascade of upset. And I'm interested to see if this continues, how this goes. But I think the women's game has the potential to get even more popular over the next couple months and the next couple years. Sorry, with what they have with Layla and Emma Raducanu and Coco Gauff, who gets to the final. Obviously, Swiatek. You still have veterans like Pliskova and women of that sort. But I think women's tennis will grow, and it'll be part and parcel because of the 3 longstanding veterans who are going to be out of the game because of just after playing 15 years, 20 years apiece, they're going to say they're going to be gone. And I think some tennis fans are going to be like, well, who do we root for now? Let's go to the women's game, see what they have, see what they have in store, see what they have to offer. If a woman like Swiatek can really go on a run, if she can win multiple majors, if she wins the French, which she likely will do, there's another major under her belt. If she could go to Wimbledon, if she could win a few majors in a row, then she's got momentum. You're interested because you're like, well, she's the heavy favorite. She's going to be the favorite at every major going in. Who's going to be the one to upset her? Or in the men's draw, if there's no Djokovic, Nadal, or Federer, there is no favorite. It's very much just it's an open field and who can grab the momentum and who could go win it. Because, in the Nadal, Federer, Djokovic era, Andy Murray won a few majors when he was at his peak, and he was great. He also won an Olympic gold medal. Marin Cilic, who's going to be in the semifinal tomorrow morning, won the U.S. Open a long time ago, but he's 2 wins away from winning another major. He made it to a Wimbledon final. So he's a veteran. He's in the back end of his career, so he doesn't have a whole lot longer to play, but he's a guy that's won a major in this era. Daniil Medvedev has a major. He beat Djokovic to do it, so he does have some credibility, but he's a guy that's really only had success on the hard courts. Grass and clay have not been friendly to him. So I could just go through these names where not many guys are winning majors in this era. Dominic Thiem won 1, but it seems like an afterthought now because he's been out for a year with injuries and he lost in the first round at the French. So he's completely fallen off. Sasha Zverev is in a semifinal. He'll play Nadal tomorrow in the biggest match of his career. He got to a major final at the U.S. Open, but he lost. He ultimately didn't win. Tsitsipas got to the finals here last year. He lost. So there is no definitive favorite. Without these guys, these youngsters are still trying to prove themselves, still trying to grow on the scene. And I think the women's game has more traction than what people are giving credit for. But we'll see. But credit to Coco Gauff, Swiatek. They'll meet Saturday morning. The men's semis are tomorrow at Roland Garros. Now to hockey. Going into last night, I did not expect the Rangers-Tampa Bay Lightning series to be an all-out goal-scoring fest. I did not expect to see Igor Shesterkin and Andrei Vasilevsky play like Darcy Kemper and Mike Smith in the opposing series. But ultimately, it turned out that way for Andrei Vasilevsky anyway, with the New York Rangers defeating the Ning last night 6-2 and a dominant Game 1 effort. And It from start to finish, New York was the better team. I thought Tampa's period, their best period, was the first. They answered, every goal that New York scored. They were right there. I thought they had good possession time. But one thing you noticed early in the game from the Tampa Bay Lightning was that they really didn't have a second line that was producing a whole lot of offense. The Stamkos line played great last night. Stamkos in particular, you have Andre Palat was really effective, and Ross Colton. That line was dangerous the whole night. They had good shifts, good opportunities. But after that, I thought the best line was a makeshift line with the Tampa Bay Lightning going with 11 forwards, 7 defensemen. And that was when Nikita Kucherov was on the line with Patrick Maroon and Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. They were getting good scoring opportunities, good zone time. But after that, it was a slow night for Brandon Hagel. It was a slow night all in all for Nikita Kucherov when he was playing with his top line mates. Corey Perry had one skirmish in the first period that you could have told me he took his skates off because he had no impact on the game. And it wasn't a great night overall for team defense for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay Lightning was coming off 9 days of rest, and they looked like the more tired team last night. New York had their legs. They had jump. They had poise. And opposed to the Tampa Bay Lightning, the New York Rangers had 3 lines that scored goals last night. The only line that didn't was the 4th. But you go through it. The kid line scores. Of course, Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider put one in. And then even Artemi Panarin decided to show up and do something productive for once. So it was a full team effort from the New York Rangers. It was, like I said, after that first period, it was a dominant game. And a few things. Both teams, in particular Tampa, need to get the puck out of their own zone. And what I mean by this is last night, it was crazy the number of times where a player has the puck about a foot from getting out of their zone, out of the blue line. And you're taught in novice, get the puck out of your zone. Get it out. Don't hang and stick handle the puck where somebody can steal it and then there's more zone time. Get it out of the zone so you can change, you can go on the offense, do whatever the hell you want, but get it out of your zone. There must have been 8 to 10 times last night, and this happened to the Rangers too. I'm just watching thinking, what the hell is going on? Where good players have the puck right before their blue line, and they're just stick handling, they're taking their good old time. They're singing Dixie down at the old bay, and they got the puck, they're stick handling, and they turn the puck over. And then you're stuck out there. And that's been a huge story of these playoffs, is just long shifts. The new thing to do is just cycle the pucks. And eventually, guess what? You're tired, you break down, and you score goals. That happened to Carolina a lot against New York Rangers. That's what the Rangers do. They make you fatigued, and you make mistakes that you wouldn't ordinarily make. Smart strategy. So that's one thing. The Rangers did this a ton too. A number of times where even Lindgren, a guy I love defensively, he had the puck right close to the blue. Get it out. But that's another thing. Tampa lost this game in the second period. They came out sleepy. They were outworked. In the first period along the boards, Tampa was winning battles. Second period, they weren't. Alexis Lafreniere is a force. He's taken big strides in this postseason. I'm not going to touch on, really speculate on what I think he's going to do next season because it's irrelevant right now. But he looks like a different player. He looks like a more confident player. He's not timid. But those two guys, Kakko and Lafreniere, one thing they both have is a body, a strong body that can get guys off pucks. They're not the most skilled guys in the world, but they work hard and they make things happen. So they outwork people. That's New York. Mika Zibanejad is a superstar. He's playing like one anyway. And he's working below the hash marks. He's making smart decisions with the puck. He's a fantastic player. And his chemistry with Chris Kreider, where Chris Kreider is one of the most clutch goal scorers. If you look at it in Rangers history, he has the most Game 7 goals in Rangers history behind, Mark Messier. a 6-time Stanley Cup champion. So, and another thing I loved about New York's game is they use the whole ice, but not just that, they use the whole team. And what I mean by that is they use their defensemen. They will give the puck to the point. They will cycle it around. It's not just a forwards thing. They allow everybody on the ice to get the puck, and it's not like, oh, you need to touch it because we've had it and you haven't yet. They're just smart about the way they cycle, the way they attack the game. The New York Rangers are just advanced. For a young team, they're incredibly intelligent with how they keep pucks in the zone, the way they give it to the point. Just I love the way that they attack the game. And Tampa just didn't have an answer. I thought last night Tampa, they've hardly had a bad defensive game this postseason. You could point to game 1 against the Leafs where they were blown out, but they were brutal defensively last night. They gave guys open lanes. I point to Filipino's first goal, and this play was unbelievable by both Chytil, Kakko, but at the same time, Kakko is behind the net, and he's basically having a picnic because nobody's coming at him. He's got all the time in the world, and to make matters worse, Chytil is just like, well, where am I going to set up? Because no defenders on him. They're giving him all kinds of space, and oh yeah, it's Filipino. He's got a great shot. So they let him go there unimpeded. Kakko makes a great pass, take the tape. It's in the back of the net, 3-2, and that turned out to be the game-winning goal. But that was just an example of it. On the Kreider, first goal of the game, Ryan McDonough, he was in the neutral zone. He kind of stepped up on his defender. Well, they chipped the puck in, and he stepped up. But he had 2 guys going past him, so it was a bad read. The forward didn't know what to do in the play, so he's out no man's land. The 2 guys, the defenseman and the forward, both converge on Mika Zibanejad, and he finds Chris Kreider wide open. So it was a weird night for Tampa where they just didn't have it. They didn't have it. They were never going to have it. After that first period, that was a rout. It was over. And credit to the Rangers. And one thing I think you got to look at is the Rangers played great last night in game 1. But game 1 hasn't been that important in these playoffs. 50% of teams that win game 1 have gone on to lose the series. So, and that's throughout this entire postseason in NHL, which is really interesting to me. But the bigger deal to me is New York had tons of energy last night. They had speed. They were attacking pucks. They were high flying. They looked great. But they're coming off 2 7-game series. And they've been through a lot. They've been through wars. Ryan Lindgren is put together with basically masking tape. And now I'm looking at, well, when are they going to crash? It's like a kid that eats a bunch of sugar or gets a 5-hour energy. Eventually, after they're running around in a circle for 2 hours, they will eventually crash. They'll hit the ground, and they're snoozing before you know it. Tampa had rest. They were rusty, and they looked a little fatigued last night. They were a team that got too much sleep. Well, I expect them to be better tomorrow night. I expect Andrei Vasilevskiy to be better. This doesn't change my opinion on who's the better goalie. Vasilevskiy is still the best goalie until proven otherwise. But how long does New York have this engine? How long until they're going on reserves where they're like, okay, we really don't have much left in the tank? Because we played a ton of hockey. We haven't really done this before, and we could be out of gas before we know it. We could be on the highway, and then we have to pull off, and we're in a bad neighborhood, and who knows the hell what happens. So that's the intriguing thing for me. For the Rangers, put the pedal to the metal, because like I said, you're going to run out of energy eventually. Eventually, you're just going to be like, well, the Ning have more energy than us because they have more time off. We didn't have any time off. We've been traveling. We've been playing every second day. We're going through injuries. We've been through a lot. So that I look at New York and get wins soon. They got game 2 at home. Take care of that game, because I think the later this series goes, the more tired New York gets. And when you're tired, you make mistakes. You're more prone to ice the puck on a play where you wouldn't. You take that extra stride, but you're tired. You want to get off the ice. You'll turn the puck over inadvertently. Your decision making is not as sharp when you're tired, point blank. And I expect that New York will get more fatigued as the series goes along, and Tampa will be better as the series goes along. But I picked Tampa to win the series, and I did it very hesitantly. And the reason is because I mentioned that I think New York is a far superior offensive team when Braden Point is not in the lineup. New York has 3 lines that they can legitimately throw at you that can score goals. And I want to start with the kid line, because this line of Kakko, Hedl, and Lafreniere has been spectacular all playoffs long. And it's a great story because all these 3 guys have kind of been much maligned at certain points of their young careers. Let's start with Filip Hedl, a first-round pick that was sent down multiple times, was told he didn't have a great work ethic, he didn't battle, he wasn't scoring goals, was put on a 4th-line role, and he was a healthy scratch for a while. Last year, he was hardly playing under David Quinn. Even this year under Gerard Gallant, he had his times where he was in the doghouse. But he's battled through. He's persevered. He hasn't bitched. He hasn't complained. He didn't ask for a trade like Elias Anderson. He's battled through the tough times, and he's gotten his opportunity. We can tell he's an elite goal scorer, but he had to go through those tough times to now see the success on the other side. Kaapo Kakko, a guy that's been through a lot physically. He's had concussion problems. He's had injuries. He's been snake bit when it comes to scoring goals, and has been a guy that went 2nd overall there that you're saying, well, what is this guy going to bring to a team? Is he just going to be a 4th liner the rest of his career? Is he just a hard checker? How long is he going to be in New York? How long before he's involved in a trade package, which could still happen? But in these playoffs, he's been a good player that works hard, and he's benefited, including a big assist last night in the Hedl goal. And then there's Alexis Lafreniere, who has taken the most strides for me. Alexis Lafreniere in the regular season, and I don't just watch Leaf games. I watch a lot of teams around the league, and including New York, because they're a fun team to watch. Alexis Lafreniere had the physical presence in the regular season, but when there's no physical games and you're being a physical player, sometimes it can be weird because it's so fast that you're like, that guy just threw a hit, and that's just the way the game is now. Playoffs is different. But he was an okay player. He'd have games where you're like, okay, that guy can get 85, 90 points in this league. He's a guy that can be a difference maker. But then also there's nights where you're like, where's Lafreniere? This guy went 1st overall, and this is what he's bringing on a nightly basis. And both are completely fair, because I've watched games where Alexis Lafreniere is a no-show. And then there's nights where he's great. So the best thing you can have as a young player is consistency. When you're given a great effort one night and the next night you're a complete dog shit, that's terrible as a coach because you don't know what you're going to get. It's Jekyll and Hyde. I think of a Joe Pavelski. Joe Pavelski is a great player. 7th rounder, has been consistent his whole career. He might not go in the Hall of Fame, but every coach he's had, whether it's Rick Bowness, Peter DeBoer, go through his coaches he had in San Jose. They know what Joe Pavelski is going to give them on a nightly basis. He's going to win his faceoffs. He's going to get in front of the net, have great hand-eye, get high-quality scoring chances, and play his damn heart out. You know you're getting that every night from little Joe Pavelski. That's just a guy that comes to mind. There are more guys, but then there's guys. Here's another example of a great player that can be Jekyll and Hyde. Tyler Seguin is a great player. Well, was a great player. Now he's just a good player. But in Boston, even in Dallas in spurts, you look at Tyler Seguin, you're like, okay, that guy, I understand why he went 2nd overall. He's one of the best players in the world. His shot, his bite, he's got all the tools in the toolbox to be a stud here. But then there's games where Tyler Seguin wouldn't back check. He doesn't throw a hit, goes into a corner half-heartedly, and you're like, why? What is wrong with him? Why can't he give you sufficient effort on a nightly basis? And, that's kind of been his career, because I still think he's been hurt with injuries. But in Boston, guess what? They didn't get rid of him in Boston because he was such a great guy and he worked extremely hard and he was consistent, because they don't just throw away talent. They didn't just trade away Andrew Raycroft because he was playing fantastic and they loved his attitude. Okay, they hired him at Nesson. He might be good at that job there. Good. But they didn't trade him for Tuukka Rask thinking, oh, well, we're just going to trade Andrew Raycroft because we feel he's a super elite talent. No. So Seguin was traded for a reason to Dallas, because they didn't like his attitude and they didn't like the fact that his give-a-shit meter wasn't that high. I'm not saying Lafreniere, didn't give a shit about the game, but I also think he wasn't consistent. He wasn't a guy that you saw production night in, night out. But there hasn't been many games in these playoffs where I didn't come out of the game saying, wow, Alexis Lafreniere, he played great. He's been superb. His physical, hitting somebody is one thing. But when a guy has a puck, you hit him and you come away with the puck from that scrum, from the altercation, that's when you know you're an efficient player, and he's doing it a ton. He's making defensemen make poor decisions because they're afraid of getting hit from Alexis Lafreniere. And then he got another 2 assists last night. He's got a connection with these two guys, and that's the kid line. They're just 3 young guys that I think are so pumped to be playing this deep in the playoffs. I think it's pretty cool, quite frankly, that they're playing together. I don't think most coaches would allow a kid line, so to speak, where all the guys are under 23 years old, to play together. It's very unique. We almost saw it in LA, where you had Tanner Pearson and you had Tyler Toffoli, thinking back in 2012 and also in the 2014 Stanley Cup playoffs. But you had Jeff Carter, the veteran, in the middle of them. It was that 70s line, but you had the 2 young guys, and then you had the old veteran Jeff Carter to keep them in line. Here, there's no father figure. There's no parent. You have the 3 childs who are out having a good time, and then there's no guardian. Gerard Glantz just on the bench saying, "Okay, go guys, have fun." And so far, they've been good kids. They've stuck to curfew. They've gotten back in their own zone. They've gotten back on time. The car isn't dinged up, and it's proven to be a good gamble by the parent, in this case being Gerard Gallant. So, credit to him and credit to these young players for getting the opportunity and making it work. We saw when Barclay Goodrow got hurt that Kako went down to the 4th line and they were putting Mott up. But, Kako being back with these guys is the best scenario, because Mott's a 4th line guy, a really efficient player. I think he can be a 3rd liner on other teams. But with this team the way it is, this is how you want it set up, because you want Mott to play his penalty killing minutes. You want him to play in those type situations, and he plays well with Reeves and Barclay Goodrow. Every line in New York, you kind of know what you're getting, and that's something that's really positive. Like I said, in Tampa, points out. So they're playing 7 defensemen. Jan Ruda is in the game. They don't have a 4th line mate every shift with Belmar and Maroon. Last night it was Kucherov during certain shifts. It was Sorelli in other shifts. So it was always an open door and an audition of sorts for a player to come in and play with them. But that's the kid line. The Panarin, Kopp, Strome line. Panarin, again, I don't think he played a great game last night. The second goal of the game was completely his fault. That Tampa Bay score where Palat, he's skating alongside Palat in his own zone, and he just stopped skating. It's a shot on goal. It's a loose rebound, and Palat gets in the net and pokes it home. If Panarin gives a shit, if he stays with his man, if he defends, that doesn't go in. But he doesn't. He starts to glide in, and Palat beats him to the puck because Palat cares. Now you could argue, oh, he made it up later and he got 2 assists in the 3rd period. Well, the game was out of hand. The game was out of hand at that. I don't give him much credit. I haven't seen him play a good game, quite frankly, since Game 7. He got the overtime winner. I give him credit for that. That whole series against Carolina, I ask anybody, go back and watch the games. I don't think he played great in one. Just because you score a goal, excuse me, doesn't mean you played great. Doesn't mean you played well. It's like plus minus. I always hear defensemen, when you're parents of a defenseman, well, my son was +1 tonight. Who gives a shit? Did he play well? Doesn't mean he played well. Did he throw a pizza up the middle? Did he get the puck out of his zone? Was he involved physically? Did he pinch in for some scoring opportunities? Or did you just look at the box score and see +1? Okay, well, he did his job. Is he getting any better? That's just a tip for parents. But this line is good because I think the best player on the line is Andrew Copp. I think he's been really a great deadline addition. I like the Hagel trade. He hasn't been great. I'm going to talk about him in a minute. But Copp has been fantastic since coming over. He's playing penalty kill. He's getting offensive production. He's doing that. I think of the other teams, Lekkonen's been okay for the Colorado Avalanche, but I think Kopp's been better than him. Manson's been okay, played horrible in game 1. And then Edmonton's didn't have any deadline moves. So I think with the teams remaining, the best bang for your buck has been Andrew Copp by far because he's playing second-line minutes. He's killing penalties, and he even plays on the second unit of the power play. So he's been great. Side note, my brain was working last night, and I want to help people. And I don't think this is necessarily just for this team, but I was texting my uncle about this, and I thought I'd share it with the podcast. And this is about the Toronto Maple Leafs primarily. And it's a hypothetical situation, but just come along the ride with me. So my thought process is, the team's got to change. It might be the goaltender or whatever. We're going to get to the New York Rangers first line, but I just don't want to forget this because I wrote it down and I want to get to it. So my thought is, in the offseason, the Toronto Maple Leafs have to trade William Nylander. I don't think it's all his fault. I think he's a scapegoat for a lot of stuff with this team. Is his effort great? No. But are there players that deserve blame as well? You bet. And I think oftentimes he takes the bullets, but whatever. You trade William Nylander, maybe you get a defenseman in the trade. But just in this hypothetical, William Nylander's off the roster. His money's off the roster. So you're missing a forward up front. But in this hypothetical, you trade William Nylander, but in return, in free agency, you're able to land Andrew Copp. Andrew Copp he can do a bunch of different things. He can play center. He can play wing. Like I just mentioned, he's a penalty killer. He can play power play. And you've seen him. He's in a conference final. He's on a good run. He's a team guy where in Winnipeg, he played on a third line for a long time. He accepted that role. He battled through it, was on the best third line in hockey with Adam Lowry for about a year and a half. And now he's grown. He's a better player. I think he's a 25 goal scorer in the regular season. Really good player. So, for everybody out there, would you, if you were the Maple Leafs, if you had to trade William Nylander, but in this hypothetical, you land Andrew Copp in free agency for likely less money, would you do it? To me, this is really simple. I would. Because I like Andrew Copp as a player more than I like Bill Nylander. I like Bill Nylander. I've joked on this show before. I've had multiple people say that I kind of look like him. So I do have a soft spot for him and people picking on him. Pick on somebody else. He's got good hair, which I appreciate. There's a guy with good hair, at least I think. I appreciate that. But I would do that because Andrew Copp brings a lot to the table. Mitch Marner wouldn't have to play as much on the penalty kill if you had Andrew Copp on your team. That's something I think they should look into. Did Marner look tired? But no, giving him less minutes in the regular season is something that's important. He doesn't need to play that, 22, 23 minutes a night. If you have Andrew Copp, he doesn't have to play all the time in the penalty kill. He can be like Draisaitl and go out in the last 20 seconds and hope to create an offensive opportunity when the guy comes out of the box. That's how you should use him. Where then you have Andrew Copp who can penalty kill. He jumps into your top six just like Nylander, but he could play center. He's a better alternative than Alex Kerfoot, who I think they should try to move in the offseason. But Tavares could play with Copp potentially. Maybe Copp gets his own line. And this would probably not be reported this way, but Kopp could be your number 2, number 3 center, where on the depth chart it likely says Tavares in the 2 hole because you want to hide his feelings because he's the guy with the pajamas and he came home, he's the captain and everybody loves him, yada, yada, yada. Bleh. But Kopp right now is a better player. He's more efficient. He's a better skater. And, you could just skim it. And because you have to parse words and you have to keep everybody intact and get feelings getting people feeling the right way, you do it this way. You just say, hey, Kopp, you're a third line center. Wink. Really? He's a second line center. And by the end of the year, maybe eventually you have the courage, you have the heart, the stones to tell John Tavares, hey, you're our third line center. Deal with it. You should just be happy you're on this roster making $11 million for the production that you give us. You could have that. It could just be as blunt as me. I doubt they will. I doubt Kyle Dubas will be as blunt as me. Doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. But I thought of that hypothetical last night. I think a lot of teams are going to want Andrew Kopp. More than just the Leafs, but I think that's something the Leafs could do. Because you move out money and you bring in, you could get a defenseman, a mid-level defenseman in Andrew Kopp for William Nylander's money. He makes almost $7 million. I think you could sign Kopp for 4.5 over 4 to 5 years, and then you could bring in a defenseman for $3 million. There you go. There's your money. There's a deal for you. 7.5 million. You can bring another D in to boost your defense score that's already pretty good. But you can move out Justin Hall. I'm sure it's going to be marketed that the kids deserve an opportunity. Well, I don't think Mark Giordano should just be penciled in to play every night. He's going to be 39. Played horrible in the playoffs. I don't think it's just a lock that he gets to play. He makes $800,000. Jason Spezza wasn't a lock to play every night. So that's another thing. But that's just a hypothetical. Again, we're talking about the Rangers and Ning. But that's something, if you listen to the pod, think about the hypothetical and let me know. Because to me, it's a no-brainer. You do it because William Nylander is a better offensive player than Andrew Kopp, no doubt about it. But Andrew Kopp has more heart, and he's more willing to pay the price to win. And if you refute that point with me, I will point to the playoffs and the fact that Andrew Kopp is still playing, and William Nylander, he didn't even win the World Championship. So we can have that conversation another day. That brings us to the Rangers top line. I apologize for the sidebar, but I thought it was interesting. Mika Zibanejad is a blossoming superstar. He's playing fantastic. To think that he got traded from Ottawa to New York for Derek Brassard and a second-round pick. Derek Brassard at the time was just as well-known, a guy that everybody wanted. And to be fair to Ottawa, Derek Brassard was on the team that got to a conference final in 2017. But Derek Brassard was gone the next year. He's bounced around. He's been bought out. He's not been a great player. And Mika Zibanejad has gone from Ottawa kind of giving up on him. He wasn't great in Ottawa, but he showed signs of being great. And you could look at Ottawa not giving him enough help to really boost it up. He gets to New York. He's been a consistent player for a number of years. But now, as we head into the home stretch here, we're finally seeing him develop into a superstar. And I truly mean that. He's playing like a superstar. He's playing confident. He's making smart decisions with the puck. His passing ability, he's lethal on the power play. He seems to score every big power play goal for the Rangers. And he's a guy that penalty kills. He's a guy that scores goals. And he's 29. He turned 29 in April. It's late for your prime, if you will, in today's age. But to me, he's turning into it. He was 6th overall in the 2011 NHL draft. He's been a late bloomer to become a great, great player. But in these playoffs, he's been a superstar for the New York Rangers. Chris Kreider, again, he's so clutch. But that top line has been great. For Tampa moving forward, I expect Vasilevsky to be better in Game 2. Game 2 is the important game. You want to go home with the split for Tampa. I expect Vasilevsky to be more sharp. I expect Tampa to be more sharp when it comes to playing a full 60 minutes, not playing 20, and then packing it up. But if Tampa's going to win this series, they're going to need some offense. They can win close, low-scoring games, but they're going to need to score some goals in order to win. And my X factors, I kind of was writing these as the game went on last night. Number one, I have Brandon Hagel. I don't think Braden Point's going to play the rest of this postseason. I think he's really hurt. He didn't skate today. He's not going to play in game 2. So who knows what's up with him, but I think he's really hurt because he'd be playing otherwise. This isn't like Freddie Anderson situation, or I'll get to the Colorado goaltending situation here in a minute. But Brandon Hagel, they traded away 2 first-round picks for this guy. He had a really good year in Chicago. He's been okay in the playoffs. Again, he hasn't been scoring goals. He's been efficient when he's on the ice. He checks. He usually defends pretty well. But he needs to score some goals. He's snake bit right now. He doesn't look confident with the puck. He's got a little bit of Marty Neckash syndrome in him, like in Carolina, where he's passing up really good opportunities to shoot the puck. He'll make the extra pass. And for Brandon Hagel, shoot the puck. You score goals in the regular season. You can do it now. I think that's key for him, is for him to be a factor, him to score goals for Tampa. Another guy for Tampa, for me, is Sergachev. He's just been good. I think it's a lot to ask a Hedman and Chernak to defend as well as they have been, and then play against the top guys, and then to produce all the offense. Sergachev has to be better. He's an elite defenseman, and he has more to give. I don't know if he's banged up, but everybody is. He's got more to give offensively. I think he's a guy that needs to take some opportunities. You're playing with a solid defense pairing. He needs to do more to be an X factor for Tampa Bay if they're going to win, because I just look at their forward group, and there isn't a lot there that jumps off the page. Again, Corey Perry's had a really good playoffs, but he's not an offensive guy. Ross Colton's been really good. I expect him to have a big game in this series. You need Killorn to find a goal, get one in the back of the net. He can usually get hot. But for me, Brandon Hagel is that guy. Score a big goal, get Tampa on the board, get that momentum going. Maybe that line will catch fire, because so far, really throughout these playoffs, it's been consistent. New York has 3 lines that can attack you. And not to mention, they have a back end with Adam Fox and Keandre Miller, who only continues to get better. That would scare me, because they can score goals in waves. And like I said, they use the whole ice and they use their whole team. Nobody is pushed aside when it comes to getting scoring opportunities. Yes, the Reeves, Goodrow, Tyler Mott line is not the most offensive line, but they usually get pretty good offensive zone time. They normally cycle the puck well, and they make it tough on your opponent. So, again, New York is a tough team, but I want to see what Tampa responds with when it comes to net minding and their strategy. And also, as this series goes on, how fatigued are the Rangers going to be? How fatigued are they going to be when they have played back-to-back 7-game series? They get no break, and it's just a long, long grind. Tampa got 9 days off. They didn't travel in that time. They stayed in Tampa Bay. And like I said earlier in the podcast, for the Rangers, it's vital for them to win these early games, because as the longer this series goes, I see it benefiting the Tampa Bay Lightning, because they've had rest, because they're going to have fresher legs, because they're going to have less injuries. Where New York, if Lindgren plays a bunch of games, he might just break down. You go through their lineup, I think you can point to guys that just aren't feeling it right now. Maybe Panarin. I don't buy it because I think he's a lazy shit. But if I'm New York, I'm putting my pedal to the metal. You got Shesterkin's playing fantastic. He's got like a .972 save percentage in his last 3 starts. So continue to ride that wave of momentum. Ride it, and you got another home game Friday night. That crowd's electric at Madison Square Garden. They have a belief that you can win a Stanley Cup, and use that to your advantage. New York just 4 years ago put out a letter saying we're going to completely bottom out. We're going to completely just tear it down. We're going to rebuild what we had. And to think that they are this close to a Stanley Cup final just 4 years later is pretty incredible what Chris Drury and these guys have done. They fired David Quinn. They went through different guys. They found Gerard Gallant, who had just been let go by Vegas. And he's turned out to be the perfect hire for them. He's turned out to be the greatest hire for them because he's been fantastic. And actually tonight, I believe it's pregame of Oilers Avalanche. We will find out the winner of the Jack Adams award winner this year, which is the Coach of the Year, which is Andrew Brunette in Florida, Daryl Sutter in Calgary, and Gerard Gallant in New York. And I believe that Andrew Brunette is going to win it. And the reason I say that is because Florida won the President's Trophy. Joel Quenneville had to resign. That team could have capsized, but ultimately they didn't. They did in the playoffs, but this is a regular season award. I believe that Andrew Brunette will win it, but maybe it'll be Daryl Sutter. I don't know if there's a whole lot of push for him. Again, I think he's loved by the media in a lot of ways. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Daryl Sutter win this, but if I had a vote, it would be for Andrew Brunette. Again, to me, Coach of the Year is the most simple award to vote for. The coach that had the best record should win it. You coach the best. Your team played the best. I don't care if your team sucked the year before, and then ultimately you were great the next year. Were you the best? Did you just sneak into the playoffs? There's coaches, I remember when Tortorella won it. There were coaches that had 50 more points than Tortorella, but he won the award because Columbus was garbage the year before. Well, why? That's not how it should work to me. Do we hand out the Stanley Cup to the team that tried the hardest? Do we hand it out to the team that, they lost in the first round, but it was triple overtime games? No, it's the team that ultimately wins. Same thing in the regular season. Florida won the most games. Andrew Brunette was the coach of that team. He should win Coach of the Year. We'll see if he does. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but I suspect that if I had to make a prediction, I will say that Daryl Sutter will win it. I think there's a lot of nostalgia with Daryl. They like him. Calgary had a great turnaround after not making the playoffs and that narrative. And that of the three potential coaches of the year, Florida made the playoffs the year before. They lost in the first round. New York lost in the first round, so Gallant took over for a team that was a playoff team. And then you have Daryl Sutter. Calgary was one of the most underperforming teams. They didn't make the playoffs, and then they finished first in the West in points. Sorry, second in the West in points behind Colorado. So I wonder, again, if we're going off precedent with this award, Daryl Sutter will be the winner. Do I think he should be? No, but I think come tomorrow, we'll find out that Daryl Sutter is the winner of the Jack Adams Trophy. Now to our other playoff series. We got Avs-Oilers Game 2 tonight. Interesting for sure. And the reason I say interesting for sure is the goaltending situation. Game 1, we saw Mike Smith pulled by the Edmonton Oilers. Mikko Koskinen came in, and I talked about yesterday how Mikko Koskinen was good in relief, but it shouldn't be really a discussion. It shouldn't be a debate. Mike Smith should start Game 2. Well, here this morning, Mike Smith will start Game 2. So check for Jay Woodcroft. He didn't overreact. Good for him. But then in the game, Colorado starter Darcy Kuemper was injured and left early in the second period. Don't know really the extent of the injury. We know it's lower body. He wasn't out in the ice to start the second period. It delayed the start of the period. And now there's all kinds of, what's wrong with him? There was talk, is he going to start Game 2? And we learned this morning from Jared Bednar that Darcy Kuemper is out tonight. Out. So he's not even going to be eligible to back up. And this is no stranger to Darcy Kuemper. He's a guy that's been injured throughout his career. He's a guy that's always seemed to have a nick and a knack, and he's never healthy. That was part of the problem in Arizona, not also because they wanted to trim salary, but he was always hurt seemingly in the big moments. So now Darcy Kuemper's out, and tonight Pavel Francouz will start in net for the Colorado Avalanche. He's been their backup goalie for a number of years, and Francouz is a lot like Mikko Koskinen. They're both goalies from overseas. They both came over later in their careers, where Francouz was spotted at the World Hockey Championships. He was then signed after playing a really good Worlds. Colorado took a chance on him. He played a full year in the American Hockey League, and then he finally made it to the NHL. Koskinen was noticed playing in the KHL. He was brought over, played 1 year, and then the parting gift was Peter Chiarelli signing him to that long-term extension, which will finally end at the end of this season. But Francouz is not a strong goaltender. He lets in bad goals. He's just a guy that is unreliable. He's a guy that you turn to and you look and you're saying, okay, it's a playoff game tonight. We have Pavel Francouz in net. You're not confident. You don't feel good about your situation. And it's a scary night for Colorado, where you win game 1, 8-6. You had your tough times, and you're the heavy favorite coming into the series. And now you look across and you're like, oh my God, Mike Smith, the 40-year-old, inconsistent, loose cannon guy who lets in a lot of bad goals, is now the top goaltender in this series. Mike Smith is now the best goalie in this series. With Kemper out, it's not a debate. Francouz is not as good as Mike Smith. Francouz is not as good as Mikko Koskinen, quite frankly. So it's complete pandemonium for Colorado, and this completely shifts the series, in my opinion. I think Colorado is going to win it, but I'm not so certain they will now, because if you have Francouz and you have a backup goalie the rest of this series, you're not going to beat elite players the whole series. Carolina could not get past the Rangers with Antti Raanta. And Antti Raanta is better than Pavel Francouz. He's more consistent. But eventually, you're just like, well, Ranta's playing his 11th game in a row. He's never done this. And he ran out of gas. And he got hurt in the process and all this. But for Edmonton, it's got to be, you got to feel good about this, because it's not Darcy Kemper. Darcy Kemper is a solid goaltender. He's not a Vezina finalist. He's not a guy that you look at and say, well, he's one of the top goalies in the world. Unfortunately for Canada, he's one of our best goalies. He likely would have been on the Olympic team. And that tells you more about our weak goaltending in the whole country. But this can change the series. And what I look at now is for the Colorado Avalanche, team defense is the critical component here. And let me explain. I expect McKinnon and McDavid to play against each other tonight, like they did in game 1. They played each other head to head a lot, and both teams were okay with that matchup. They weren't afraid of it. They embraced it and said, you know what? Okay, McKinnon, you go against McDavid, see what you can do. If he burns you, vice versa, we can live with that. But if I'm Colorado now, I look at the McDavid line where McDavid was playing with Draisaitl, and I disagree with it, but they did it in game 1. I don't suspect they'll change it tonight. So if they're going to stick with the heavy line, if they're going to stick with their two great players on one line, then make it work against them. Where, okay, if you're going to beat us, okay, your line's going to beat us. You're going to score multiple goals. Maybe McKinnon isn't as great tonight when it comes to producing offense. That's okay. Maybe McDavid and Draisaitl get 2-3 goals, because you're going to do that with Francouz. But you also look at the other side of the rink, and you look at Colorado and you say, well, we got Nazem Kadri. Feel better about Nazem Kadri than we do Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, for example. That's just a better matchup. JT Compher and Ryan McLeod. Okay, we feel pretty good. Our fourth line against their fourth line. Yeah, I feel pretty good. Our defense score against them. So if the team defense is solid from Colorado against the other three lines, where you're not making huge mistakes, you're limiting your opportunities from the other side, you're helping out your goaltender, you're blocking shots, doing everything that you have to do. Because McDavid and Draisaitl, the two best offensive players, are on one line. They might have a big night, but the core of your team is better than the core of the team of the Edmonton Oilers. Then you might be able to rob Peter and still pay Paul, where your top line is neutralized. They're not as good as the Edmonton first line in this scenario, but the rest of your team is. So you can be in a situation where your top line is adequate They might get burned a little bit. They might have a bad plus minus tomorrow, and Nathan McKinnon's mother might scold them for it. But the rest of your team is solid defensively. They don't give up any goals against, and they score 4 to the opposing team's 3. And maybe McKinnon is able to pot one home because he did it in game 1, or McDavid isn't a great defensive player either, so he can find a way to score one. The rest of the team gets 3. JT Compher has 4 goals in his last 2 games. Nazem Kadri's been scoring a ton of goals. Darren Helm got a game winner. Cale Makar looks like an absolute superstar in these playoffs. So that's how I look at how this should go, because planning to play defensive hockey where you're basically bailing out for the David Ayers game with Carolina is not going to happen, because that's not the way Colorado's built. Now, you need Josh Manson to be better tonight. It's hard to be worse than he was in game 1, and you need him to be solid. And obviously you don't want to let McDavid and Draisaitl get 6 points each tonight. But if you can limit them to 2 or 3, and this is crazy to think, but if they can get 3 points tonight, and the rest of the Oilers team gets none, if the other lines don't get anything, you're likely going to win. I truly believe that, because the rest of Colorado's spine of their team, they have some good offensive players. You got Rantanen and Kadri, and you got Compher and that line. And even Cogliano scored the other night. Darren Helm scored in game 6 against the Blues. So that fourth line has goals in back-to-back games. I think Bowen Byram's got more to give offensively. So I have faith that the rest of that team could score some goals, could ultimately push you over the hump and win the game. It's not a guarantee, but I do think it's something to explore, because you don't want to just allow – you don't want to just look at it and say, well, we got a backup goalie and we're going to play the same way. I think if you approach the game differently and you look at it and say, we got to do better defensively, we're going to let McDavid and Draisaitl kill us, then, okay, we got to do it. But if they're together the whole night, then the other lines are going to struggle, because they have. Yes, Nugent Hopkins has been decent in these playoffs. Derek Ryan scored the other night. But for Colorado, they had a mental lapse in the third period where they let Edmonton back in the game. Don't do that tonight. Josh Manson, show up with your skates, and you'll have a decent chance. But that's how I look at this game tonight, where, yes, and I hate that they're putting McDavid and Draisaitl together. I think it's a completely wrong strategy. I think it's wrong. I wouldn't do it, because I want them on both. I want them each on their own line where they can cause havoc. Because together, they are, yes, they're great. Yes, they're elite, but the rest of the team struggles. I think the misconception here is that the Edmonton Oilers have a great roster and they have great lines, even with these guys put together. I think it's adequate. I don't think it's great. Derek Ryan's not a great offensive player. Josh Archibald isn't either. Zach Cassian's a checking forward. Their defense core is limited offensively. Eventually, you're playing a team that's deeper than you. You need 2 players on their own line so that you can try to match them offense for offense. They're playing together. I think you can only score so many goals because you're only on the ice so much. You might play 25, 26 minutes tonight, McDavid and Draisaitl. But the other team's second, third, fourth lines will play more, and they're better than your team's second, third, fourth lines. And I guess the X factor for Edmonton tonight is Mike Smith is a better goaltender than Pavel Francouz. As crazy as that sounds, he is. He's a better goaltender than Pavel. He's a starter. He's had his up and downs this year, but you're in a conference final, and Mike Smith deserves some credit for that. I don't think he's been great in these playoffs, but he's here. Second conference final as a starting goalie, kudos to him. But if he can have a game where he's not just, 40-year-old Mike Smith, where he's a true difference maker, then to quote Jerry, and when he's talking to George about the pilot, hey, we might have something here. And ultimately it was a show about nothing. But if Mike Smith wants to become legend, if he wants to become a great goaltender and take the challenge and say, I got a matchup that I need to win. If he takes this if Mike Smith approaches this like a DB, and he looks and he's Jalen Ramsey, and he's got Devontae Adams on me, he goes, I have to shut down Devontae Adams, but I'm better than Devontae Adams. I'm Jalen Ramsey. I'm a fucking all-pro. I can shut him down tonight. Well, Mike Smith might just say it's different, but he might say, you know what? I'm pretty good. I'm not Darrell Rivas, but I'm Antonio Cromartie. And I'm not covering Anquan Bolden, but I'm going to cover Michael Crabtree. I'm going to cover him pretty well. And maybe you can win that matchup. But the X factor, as crazy as it sounds, the X factor is Mike Smith and what he brings to the table. Because I expect that the Colorado Avalanche as a team to be better and to be able to score more goals offensively than the Edmonton Oilers team. Maybe I'll be wrong about that, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But I expect to see that. I don't expect to see the Edmonton Oilers' second, third, and fourth lines be that creative. They got a few goals in game one. I think it'll be less because I think they're going to be ready for what they're going to bring to the table, and what they're going to bring to them when it comes to head-to-head matchups. But we'll see tomorrow. But yeah, game 2 tonight. When it comes to betting, it's an interesting one. I didn't bet on the game last night, Tampa and New York, because people were texting me about Tampa. I didn't have a great feeling about them winning the whole day yesterday. I just said, I just had this feeling that they weren't going to win. And going into tonight's game, Colorado wins game 1, but they have, obviously, we just talked about, they have Frank Coase tonight and a backup goalie. And I'm like, well, so Colorado is a minus 1.5 point favorite tonight. The over for goals scored tonight is 7.5. So what I'm going to say tonight is I'm going to take the Avs as the home favorite. But I'm going to take McDavid as an anytime goal scorer. He's playing plus 116 tonight. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to take Nazem Kadri anytime goal scorer tonight at plus 186. So I like Kadri to score tonight. I like McDavid to score tonight, but I like Colorado to find, and I like the over. So I wouldn't bet a winner. I wouldn't do that. I'd bet the over on the game. I'd bet McDavid to score tonight, and I'd bet Nazem Kadri to score tonight. I see both those guys scoring. I see the game going over. And then there's also, you can get some betting lines in on the NBA Finals as we can transition into that. Tonight, Golden State, Boston, game 1. You got the Warriors are a -4 favorite tonight. Game 1 in Golden State. So far in these playoffs, Golden State won game 1 against the Denver Nuggets. They won game 1 against the Memphis Grizzlies. Came down to the wire, but they won it. And they won game 1 against the Dallas Mavericks. So they have 3-0 in game 1s. The Boston Celtics are also they're 2-1 in games. They lost in the Eastern Conference Final in game 1 to Miami. They're 2-1, and they're 0-1 on the road in these type of games. So as I look tonight, I like Golden State tonight. I think -4. I do think it'll be a tight game, but I could, these NBA games usually stretch out. So I'm going to say Golden State -4 is a good bet. So the picks of the day, I like Golden State -4. I like the over in the hockey game tonight, which is a 7.5. And I like McDavid and Kadri anytime goal scorers. Those are the picks of the day. I like that. But I'm looking forward to the game tonight in the NBA. And the most intriguing matchup for me personally is just Jaylen Brown and Klay Thompson and their efficiency. Jaylen is a great player. He's a great shooter, but his dribbling has been just flat out atrocious. He's turning the ball over at a record rate. He dribbles into problems. He will lead himself into getting getting called for a charge because he dribbles into traffic, and then the refs are forced to blow the whistle. So he has his ups and downs as a player. Klay Thompson, the same thing. Klay Thompson's a great story. He's a hard guy not to like. He's a multiple-time champion. You could argue the second-best shooter in the history of the NBA. But he tore his Achilles, he's torn his ACL, and now he's recovering, trying to get back to where he was. But to me, this matchup could decide the winner of this series because I expect Steph Curry to be good. I think this is going to be a finals for him where he really puts a stamp on it. He hasn't won a finals MVP. I think it's extremely important to him. I expect Jason Tatum to be great. I want Jason Tatum to shoot the ball more, but I expect the best players on both teams to be good. When you get to the second best player, I look at Jaylen Brown and Klay Thompson. If Jaylen doesn't turn the ball over and he averages 20 to 25 a game in this series, that's going to be tough for the Warriors to overcome because I think Tatum's going to average 30 at least. I think Tatum will average 30. If Brown can average 25, that's a lot of points in the top two players. And for the Warriors, they win a lot of games when Klay is hitting threes, when he's coming off screens and he's hitting a good percentage. For most of that series against Dallas, he was not hitting his threes. In game 5, the closeout game, he did. I think in this series, he can't just be good in the closeout game because they're going to need him. Yes, I think both teams have really good benches. Grant Williams, Derek White. I think Tice is going to get some minutes. So both these teams are going to – you give your stars rest because you have good benches. In Golden State, Gary Payton Jr. II. I think Bielitsa is going to play. Moody's gotten minutes. Iguodala might get minutes. He's coming back healthy. So both these teams have good Jordan Poole. I'm missing him. Both these guys have great benches that can provide scoring, that can provide defense. But if Klay's hitting threes, then the Warriors are extremely difficult to beat. If Jaylen Brown is rocking the mid-range game, he's not turning the ball over, and he's shooting a great stroke, then it's going to be difficult for the Warriors to overcome that. So that matchup is going to be pivotal, in my opinion. Just both guys, both shooting guards, to see who's more efficient. Both are good defenders. I'm also curious to see if they guard one another. The way, Klay, his lateral movement hasn't been as good since coming back from injury, but I think he can handle Jaylen for most of the game because, like I said, I think Wiggins is going to take Jason Tatum. They'll throw Curry on Smart because Smart is not a great offensive player, and Smart will obviously take Curry in the defensive end because he hurt him a few months ago. But that'll be a matchup. Horford will likely line up with Draymond. I think Draymond will have to take him, but I think Draymond will be used a lot when it comes to switches, when it comes to pick and roll. He can guard the opposing team's best player as well. So again, the stylistic matchup and the when you're making changes and I think both these coaches are really, really smart guys. Steve Kerr and Ime Udoka are here for a reason because they're really good coaches because they've been there, done that. Obviously, Steve Kerr is a champion. Ime Udoka is trying to become a champion in his first season. And, what he's done for Boston is crazy. But I expect a chess match where you see certain players start to get momentum and you got to make a change. Do they put Draymond? Do they go small? For Golden State, how often did they go big? How often did they go small? Because Looney is he's great at grabbing rebounds. He's great in the pick and roll with Steph, the pick and pop. But how many minutes does he get if Time Lord Robert Williams is hurt and doesn't play a big role in this series? Is Kevon Looney on the floor that often? Or do they play Draymond at the 5 and then they go Steph Curry and Jordan Poole, Klay Thompson on together, and then you can throw whomever, another like Gary Payton on the floor with those guys. I saw that in the second round where they weren't afraid to do that. So that's kind of what I'm intrigued with is just who's on the floor against one another and how they approach it based on the opposing team. How does Boston counteract those lineups with the 3 splash bros with Poole, Curry, and Thompson? What kind of defensive lineup do they get on the floor to mix with that? How often does Derek White play late in games? Does his shooting carry over from the third round? So I think it's going to be a really fun NBA Finals. It's a 10 o'clock tip tonight. With the hockey game, you got that at 9, this at 10. That is good. I'm glad that it's staggered a little bit. I mean, it's a little late, I will say. But, again, I'm going to stay up and watch it. I'm not fooling anybody here. I'm definitely staying up to watch the game, and I'm looking forward to it tonight. So we'll also recap that game tomorrow. We talked golf yesterday with the Live Golf Tour and Dustin Johnson and being dropped by RBC, but this weekend, starting today, it's the Memorial Tournament, Jack's tournament down in Ohio. And today, KH Lee, Kyung-Hoo Lee, who won a few weeks ago just prior to the PGA, is on top of the leaderboard, tied with Luke List, Cameron Smith, and Cameron Young, who are all 5 under today at top of the leaderboard. Behind them is Sahith Theegala, who's had a great rookie season on the PGA Tour. He's -4 through 11. Canadian Corey Connors is -4 through 9. He hasn't had a great year on the PGA Tour, but he is a good golfer, and we've seen some Canadians struggle, but good to see him at top of the leaderboard. We also have Will Zalatoris shot 4 under today. Max Homa 3 under. Keegan Bradley, Tiny Answer. So some good players still on the course. We got Mackenzie Hughes, another Canadian, is 2 under through 13. Matt Kuchar, Siwoo Kim, Jordan Spieth was 2 under today. Bryson DeChambeau making his return. He's -1 through 10. Rory McIlroy is -1 through 9. So those, you got Colin Morikawa shot 1 under today. He's been on kind of a cold stretch. John Rahm is -1 through 10. So every big player goes to this event, and it's a great tournament because it's a really tough course to play normally. And Jack likes to make it tough on the players. Of course, Jack Nicklaus, the greatest of all time. So every player gets up for this event, and I'm looking forward to tracking it this weekend. Obviously, Dustin Johnson and the LIV Tour have kind of taken the headlines this week from the PGA Tour, which is not a good thing. That's been what has been the topic of discussion, and not that you have the Memorial, and then you have the Canadian Open, and then it's the U.S. Open just 2 weeks from today. It's more about Dustin Johnson leaving and sponsorship deals, and Sergio Garcia telling the PGA Tour to effectively suck it. But that's what's going on in Major League Baseball. Another tough day for the Angels. They're currently down 6-1 to the Yankees in the top of the 8th. Not a great start for Ohtani. Aaron Judge took him deep. So the Yankees are staying red hot. Aaron Judge is the MVP frontrunner. It's way too early to get into that. I mean, I'm not doing that in the beginning of June. We still got 4 months to play, but he's playing great baseball. The Rays are currently leading the Rangers in Texas. They're trying to avoid a sweep down there. And the Blue Jays are in a game with the White Sox. They've won their 7th straight last night. Great bullpen effort from guys like Ross Stripling and arms that came in and provided some effort, because Ryu could only go, I think, 3 innings, and then he was pulled from the start. They're currently 0-0 in the bottom of the 3rd with Johnny Cueto, the former great San Francisco Giant and Cincinnati Red, going up against the Blue Jays ace Alek Manoah, who has just been unbelievable this year for them. So we're going to have a lot to talk about tomorrow, Friday. It will likely be 2 o'clock tomorrow, a little earlier show with the Friday show. If you can't join us live, join us later on the podcast. Like I said, we'll recap the games tonight. We're going to talk about NBA. We'll talk tennis as well, and any other breaking news. And I'll try to get in some baseball, because this Angels business, they got a doubleheader today. But the more they lose, the more it's bad for baseball if the Angels start to lose games, because they desperately need the Angels to be relevant, and they desperately need the Angels to be good, because they want them to play later in the season. If it's another July where the Angels are out of it, the Astros have an 8-game lead, that's not good for baseball. That's not good for anybody if you're doing business. So we'll be back tomorrow. Hope you guys all enjoyed the show today. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. This is To The Point.